Hi, my name's Adrian McCarney and I went to Marceline College.
Claire Jokes, Victorian College of the Arts Secondary School.
I'm Olivia and I went to Wesley College.
My name's Migley and I went to Melbourne Girls College.
My name is Stephen DiDonato. I went to Xavier College.
My name's Molly Binns and I went to Ballarat Grammar.
I'm Elizabeth Wilson and I go to Ballarat Grammar.
Hi, my name's Lainey and I went to Victorian College of the Arts Secondary School.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Jane and I came from Malona College in Mitcham.
My name is Chloe Quinlan and I went to Sacred Heart Girls College.
My name is Jason Willers and I went to Templestowe College.
Hi, my name's Britt Dargaville and I'm from the Peninsula School.
I'm Jade and I'm from Oberon High School.
I'm Callum Croker and I went to Wesley College.
My work, it's called Dress, and basically it's a standard dress, just a cotton dress, but it has been grown over the top of with living plants, with seeds.
I have two separate A3 pieces, biro drawings of they're depicting two Formula One crashes.
It's like a textile sculpture piece made of feathers and shells and wings.
Basically, the piece Political Problem focuses on the feminism in politics in Australia. There's gender stereotyping kind of used to represent the male species and the female species, and basically in politics, if a woman is seen crying, it's usually deemed as emotionally unstable, but when a man is crying, it's usually seen as like sensitive and good. And so basically the piece represents the male form or the male figure or public figure as successfully sensitive, and that's written in bold blue letters, which blue is a gender stereotyping colour, in capitals. And then underneath it's like a collapsed kind of font, talks about emotionally unstable, which is a representation for the female gender in politics because they're seen a little bit more weak and vulnerable.
The artwork itself is a installation of a chair and a coffee table, just like a common lounge room. And I've used paint to make this installation from the front perspective of it to look like a 2D painting.
So I have three artworks in this exhibition. I have Petals in Evolution, which is a mandala derived from my hand drawings of coloured pencil flowers. I have Cascading Patterns, which is tapestries created again out of my own hand-drawn pattern work. And I have Unified Symmetry, which is constructed of 40 layers of laser-cut card stacked on top of each other to create a three-dimensional form.
One of them is a box that has a drawing in it of my granddad and lots of little objects. And the other one is two little boxes, one of which has some footage of like a moving landscape and the other has a drawing in it.
Self-portrait in Rubik's Cubes is essentially a composition of a younger self made of 1,575 Rubik's Cubes, all manually twisted and turned and placed into position.
I have a series of paintings on display. The name's quite long, I can read it out. It's called Little Scabs Everywhere, You're Gonna Be Totally Fine, and you can only get away with that because you're Anne, and we usually do the safer one, but then we decided to try the quicker, bit more dangerous one.
Two quite large paintings of a girl which I didn't know at all, which was quite the point of it, I guess.
My artwork is a sculpture and it's made of a vine called Dodder Vine. It's like a parasitic weed that grows around the region, Point Addis, like Bells Beach area, which is where I live.
In my artwork, I have me, I'm the model, as a puppet on strings. And so I wanted people to understand how I often feel when I dress a bit differently to how normal people would dress. So in the piece, I'm wearing some pretty interesting socks and a big frilly dress, and some people would think, oh, that's a bit silly, you look like a doll, you look like a child, you should grow up. But I wanted to show with the strings that when you don't be who you want to be, you're being pulled by the strings of expectation.
It's a photograph of me standing in front of a mirror, and in the background you'll see a suit, like a business suit, and an artist smock.
The work that I have, it's called Wool Gathering, and it's basically a film that sums up childhood and beauty within childhood and kind of explores nature and how people can grow within nature.
There's this one artist, she's Regine Ramsey, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but some of her work, she also does like wearable art kind of, and it's also utilizing plants. So I didn't consciously do this, but she's someone I explored in year 11, and so she kind of linked in quite nicely, like subconsciously.
Well, the main inspiration that I took was mainly from basically the world around us and the events that they happen all the time, but we miss them because they're over in a blink of an eye. And what I really wanted to do was change the misconception of the sport of Formula One of always being sort of aggressive and a heart racing sort of sport. And I wanted to show viewers that when you slow it down, it can take on this sort of elegance and frozen delicacy to it.
Interplay between chance and control, and how you balance them and how you use them to make, I guess, an aesthetically pleasing artwork.
I think I was inspired by cycles of power and how people retain it, and that kind of got me onto the subject of domesticated animals and how humans assert and get their power through the destruction of animals.
I was really inspired by dolls, actually. Ever since I was really young, I've had a really big fascination with dolls. Their big eyes and their seemingly perfect skin. So I've always really wanted to be a doll forever, basically. They take over my room, but I love them. So in my piece, I wanted to show how people can be beautiful dolls too, and we don't have to grow up and be an adult and not be pretty.
My folio is based on the life and death of people, but rather than focusing on death itself, it's sort of how life runs on after death. And that was my main focus on my folio, along with trying to focus on three-dimensional artworks to pull myself away from the piece of paper, because I always focused on painting and drawing, so I wanted to focus on some 3D works.
What I intended to achieve, I guess, with the overall meaning was to capture a glimpse of my younger self whilst encompassing what I enjoyed. And from a young age, I could always remember playing with Rubik's Cubes. In about grade 6, I decided to learn how to figure out how to solve a 3x3 Rubik's Cube. And ever since then, I've progressed to about 5x5. And so it's it's all the same theory in a sense.
So I've always been pretty concerned. As soon as I hit maturity, I was pretty focused on the way that women are treated in society and the differentiate how different it is to men, and obviously the difference in pay. So, I mean, I think that the political kind of thing, I remember the concept came to me when I was sitting in a car. And I was thinking about, I think I was listening to the radio and I was talking about how Julia Gillard was crying and she was, seen as, such a vulnerable and uncontrolled figure, which to me seemed completely ridiculous.
I started with the theme of identity, and as that's a very broad theme, I sort of narrowed it down through my exploration towards my memories and my experiences and how to portray that visually, but also in terms of linking it to my cultural heritage and my family history. So that's why I started looking at found objects and weathered materials to try and create a link to that history.
And I originally started with the thought of mankind and our effect on the environment, but instead I wanted to use the natural materials, so I went with maybe I should use something that's actually hurting the environment instead of taking things that are doing good. The parkland is a significant place in my life. I have been visiting there since I was young, and when I found out that the vine was hurting the environment, I was like, yeah, let's do something about this.
Initially last year I explored skin and tone and tried to learn how to actually paint, and this year I wanted to go into colour and try and figure out how to manipulate a form or subject matter. And I used a girl which I actually that was just walking around my school, and I just kind of was like, hey, you, I want to paint you. And with that, so I wouldn't have an emotional attachment to the subject matter, and I wouldn't change the way I saw, like paint them the way that I saw them rather than what they actually were.
The theme of my folio was cogs of the mind, so I was looking at all the subconscious things going on in the mind, and I was really looking at choices, and so I questioned what choices do I have to make, and one of the biggest choices of my life, my career choice, and so basically that's either to become an artist or a businessman.
It started off literally, I just saw some plastic in the studio space at my school, and I had some leftover enamel from Bunnings for painting just houses at home, and I decided to just test that out, and it looked really cool and I really liked it.
So all of my work began with original hand drawings, and so that was intricate ink or pencil artworks. From there, I wanted to push the boundaries and experiment how applying them to different mediums and subjecting them to the crude use of different Photoshop and digital processes could manifest them into something completely different and, in a different sense, beautiful from their original form.
The process of making the dress, it started off with finding just a really, really basic cotton dress, just like the simple, like symbolic cotton dress. And then what I did was I cut it at the seams, at the sides, and I cut a hole in the front of the stomach. And the hole was so the roots could be seen on the other side. So the texture of the seeds is all around it, but then you can see the roots on the other side to have like the contrast of the textures. And then after cutting the hole in the stomach, I put wire around the inside edge and then just sewed it around so it wouldn't bend and stuff. And then what I did was I stitched cotton wool, like layers of cotton wool by hand onto the outer sides of the dress. And then that was so that the seeds could grow in and stay, so like stick to it. And then I basically just flattened the dress out completely at this, because it's cut at the seams, sewed seeds all over it and just watered it and waited for it to grow, which took about 2 weeks, something like that. And then after that, I just hung it up, sewed it up again, and it was done.
I made the artwork, basically I sourced my 2 images and I roughly proportioned them on the page so I could get the proportions of the actual car right. And then I sketched out in further detail with pencil and then started to go over it in biro.
I don't know anything about textiles, so I started off just stealing my parents' sheets and cutting them into a giant sort of what I thought might fit a mannequin, and I sort of just kept trying and retrying until it sort of fitted it vaguely. And then I went through the process of finding and gathering and cleaning all the animal materials like shells and feathers. The wings I have, they were from roadkill, and the belt is made of rabbits that were also roadkill, and so I had to sort of skin them and prepare those materials and sort of clean them down. Yeah.
Because I took a photo of each individual aspect, I had to stitch it together on Photoshop. And one thing I found interesting was I blurred the edges to get rid of all the sharp edges, and that gave the photo more of a painting feeling. It felt more like a painting.
So first I started off with like a small amount of Rubik's Cubes in a small scale experiment, and then I figured out how pixelated it looked and whether I liked it or not, and then that would determine whether I bought more. Eventually my second order was a 1600 unit order of just tiny Rubik's Cubes. And then I did the same process. I took an image and then I put it through a program which rendered it with each individual pixel, and then it spat out a guide for me to then twist and turn in about blocks of 9x9 Rubik's Cubes.
Okay, so basically the neon process is very complex. It starts simply as just like the design, which gets put on a graphic kind of machine, and we create the blueprint, or like the big scale size, life size kind of print. And the glass is then bent onto the print. This is really briefly, but there's lots of materials. We kind of bend it onto the big print. And once the glass is bent, it's all these different kind of circuits, because the 10 millimeter tubes are only, say, 1 meter long. So you got all these different circuits. They're all hooked up. And once they're all hooked up, you connect the circuits and you connect it to the transformer. This one has perspex on the back, so it looks like it's kind of on the wall rather than a piece. It looks like it's floating. So then once you connect all the circuits, then the light is fired up, or the neon is inserted into the piece. There's no color in it, it's just the neon, or the argon gas. And the circuits are connected, the vacuum sucks out all the air, and there's only gas, and it switches on. I had to learn all the physics. I barely passed year 10 science, so it was really hard for me to understand the electrodes and everything that connected, but I did, get onto it. And I mean, the tradesman that I worked with, he still struggles to explain it completely to someone because it's so complicated.
Well, we basically just, if we're on holiday or something in the country, we'd get in the car and just, whenever we were driving, I'd make my family sort of watch out for anything, and if they found something, they'd get out of the car and put it in a bag and bring it home to me, and then I'd sort of cut it up and do the rest.
For both the works, I started with the idea of just drawing, because drawing is my strength. For the one with the soldiers in it, I went through old photographs and I picked out ones that were evocative or just nice to look at. And then I picked that one because I thought that it might be like universally significant. So I drew that, and then after that I went around looking for old materials and old objects and sort of mapped out a construction, and then just had to sort of play around with the placement of different things. A lot of old wood that I found in hard rubbish, that was the main structure of all my works. And then things that I found at my grandparents' house, like old sort of religious iconography, and I think it has an old spinning top, some old coins and dice.
I used a tripod to stick my camera on, and my camera has a little remote that allows me to take photos with. And then it has a screen also that flips, so I could see myself in the camera from far away. So I set up my tripod in front of me, and I went in front of a big white wall, and I started posing. And for some of my photos, you'll see I look like I'm floating. It's actually an illusion where I'm sitting on a stool. And using Photoshop CS5, I was able to edit out any unwanted background, which makes it look like I'm floating really on strings. I took about 60 photos, trying out different poses, different techniques. I tried some floating, some standing, I even tried some jumping. And I chose out the best ones. There were actually originally 10, though I cut it down to 9 because I felt it would look better when I promoted them and put them all together at the end.
I had a lot of problems with organising the time of the day which I was going to film. Because of all the various locations, there was a lot of issues with lighting, so I had to work out when each scene was going to be shot.
I think I just had to keep it in one spot and make sure that, because I couldn't bring it to school or anything, and I had to actually keep it in a certain spot and didn't move it out of I had curtains around it, so I wouldn't get any different lighting. I had to have the same lighting for the entire time, so it wouldn't I wouldn't see it differently.
One of my biggest issues was scale, because what I was doing was collaging many images of my artwork on top of each other and alongside each other on Photoshop. What ended up happening was I had these enormous files which would take sometimes overnight to load, and were the size of, in some cases, an iPod. Okay, if these were blown up to the actual size, they would almost be the size of a football field. So the problem was, I spent so much time staring at that loading symbol, doing nothing, and it was really, destructive to my creative process.
I mean, there were a couple of problems with the lighting. There were times when the neon wouldn't work and a circuit was broken, which was really annoying. It was the day before I had to submit it. I had to take it back to the tradesman, and we were like, well, how do we do this? We got to connect all the electrodes, take all the little rubber boots off the circuits and make sure that it all connected. But yeah, that was a problem. But it's also the piece itself is worth for just materials only is worth $1,300. So, I mean, I had to save up the money to, pay for the transformer, the perspex, the glass.
I think the most challenging part was time management, especially working at home and at school. It was hard to find time for all my subjects, not just art.
I had a lot of plans to have other models, but in the end, all the models' timetables didn't match up with mine, so I was left actually having to photograph myself, which I think worked out better in the end because it's about my story and my passion rather than someone else's.
Because the work is so impermanent, that's part of what interested me so much, like mediums that don't last very long, and so you don't really get attached to the work. It's like this different sort of dynamic. And so because the work is so impermanent, and after I'd exhibited and finished it, like taken it to school, it lasted maybe 4 days. Like I was spraying it by hand, but it didn't really last very long. And so I had to make a new one for the Top Arts exhibition. It's kind of interesting making it again because you learn from the process, and the first time you think about what you would do different and stuff like that if you did it again. And most people don't really have the chance to do it again, or they're not pushed to do it again because there's no reason.
The biggest challenge that I faced was actually gaining the 2D perspective, as the exact point at which the work's meant to be looked at is exactly a meter away from the work, and 5 foot and 7 inches high, because that is my height. And that was pretty much what I had to work with. So I would either run back and forth to that perspective point and go running back to the small piece of little glass, and I'll paint the outline and then run back again, and then just constantly doing that. That, or I set up a camera system where I would place my laptop on top of the height that I needed and have the camera look at that perspective point, and then have that fed to my phone, and I would watch myself paint the work.
Well, the biggest challenge with a biro drawing is I'm a pretty impatient person, so and it's a very slow medium to work with. You really have to work at it quite a bit. And another really big challenge that I came across was when I was actually doing my biro drawings and using the pen. Was what I used to do is whenever I used to stop and maybe try to rub out a pencil line or something, I used to put the pen in my mouth, and usually sometimes it'd fall out and make a mark on the page, so I had to try to figure out some way to cover that up, whether it's adding a new piece of car work or carnage or something like that.
I broke my hand in the middle of the year, which would have gravely affected the twisting and turning. Luckily, I knew how to sort of manipulate them, and I could do it with ease and not have to cause too much strain on my hand. So like I said, it's about a 24-hour ordeal to get all of the Rubik's Cubes in the positions they want. Some of the best parts were when it was just solid colour Rubik's Cubes that I could place straight away instead of having to twist and turn then place.
I would say stay focused, work as hard as you can, work every day. Don't put it off, because there's a big rush at the end of the year where you have to have everything in, and you don't want to feel like you haven't done as much as you felt you could have. And don't let people tell you that your theme is silly or ridiculous or not good enough.
I'd say to focus on what you really love and what you're passionate about, and not worry about anyone else. And if you want to do something, don't make limits to yourself and just do it.
The folio's a great deal more important than the artworks because it shows your creative thought processes, and it's just your whole backup. So if you just presented an artwork with a little folio, it's just easy for someone to think, oh, he's taken this off somewhere, he's ripped it off.
So not take Year 12 art too seriously, or 3-4 art too seriously, because that stunts the creative process a lot. Like you feel like there's all this stuff that you have to be doing, and there's for other subjects as well especially, but for art's not a subject that you can really push.
Not to have come into the year knowing what you want to do, but it's more so if you go into the year not knowing what you want to do and not knowing the type of effect that you want to have on people, you grant yourself the ability to have your eyes opened where you explore certain things, because it's not just going to develop your work and get you better grades in the subject, it's also going to develop you as an artist.
I'd suggest to future film students to plan out exactly how they're going to make the film, not just like within a year, but like every single week how they're going to further their idea, how they're going to actually achieve the filmmaking, what equipment they're going to use, and just be really like organised in what characters, what actors.
Become friends with your teachers, your cleaners, your security guards, your computer techs, and anyone else who's going to help you along the way, because when push comes to shove, those are really the people who helped me out personally, where it was staying back after hours, where it was problems with the computer. I was making a sari and the Indian lady was actually Indian, and she was exactly the person I needed to help me out with that.
Focus your folio around the things that you love and your passions. This way, when the folio work comes to completing, it doesn't seem like a chore. It becomes your relaxing time. It's something that you can sort of, almost like a diary, feed your own emotions into.
Find something that you're really interested in and passionate about, and just really, really want to explore, because you're going to spend so much time thinking about those ideas and working with those materials.
Art will definitely play a big role in the rest of my life, because I come from quite an artistic background, so it's not something that I can really cut out or avoid. But I might even, in 2016, do a degree in maybe art and design in London or something like that. So, but even if I don't do that, it's always going to be a part of my life. Like I go to exhibitions, I'm surrounded by art without intentionally doing so.
I love art, so I hope I'll keep doing it. I'm not studying it at uni, so hopefully I'll be able to take some kind of class or do it outside of university.
Well, I'm still studying Year 12 at the moment, so after Year 12 I think I'm probably going to go into a graphic design course, perhaps specialising in film or cinematography or something.
I want to study industrial design at Monash University and hopefully then progress down that line. But I don't want to lose sight of my artwork as well.
This year I'm studying architecture at Monash.
This year I got into a course at Swinburne University, so I'm doing a Bachelor of Communication Design, hoping to be a designer.
Eventually I'd really like to run my own gallery. I really, really love art beyond, I can't even put into words how much I love art, so it's part of my life all the time. So that's pretty much what I'm doing this year, just hanging out and making art.
In 2015 I got accepted into VCA in the painting course, so I'm very excited to start there.
Pretty much I'm doing fine arts, going to be studying that, and I'm trying to, because last year I took a break off competitions, going to try and enter more competitions, try and pretty much mingle, find people that I can, like other artists, whether like musicians or like visual artists. I want to find other people who can kind of show me how to paint, because I've never really learnt, no one's ever taught me, but I feel like if I talk to people and they describe it to me, I'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I'm still at school. I'm in Year 12 this year. I'm doing art, and yeah, I'm really excited for it because I know what's ahead of me.
Well, I actually thought I made a mistake, to be completely honest. At school, there were a lot of kids that I saw their artwork, especially in my class and outside of the classes, that I thought were a lot technically more impressive than mine. So at first I thought that they'd made a mistake, and but other than that I was just surprised and overwhelmed with happiness, I guess. It was a pretty good moment.
I was a bit daunted because it was not something I expected, but it was satisfying because I put a lot of work into the artwork.
I've been seeing the exhibition since I was a little kid, and it's my favourite exhibition of the year, so it was really exciting. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it. It was like crazy, like not expecting it at all. So it was a lovely surprise. Yeah.
I was actually on a tram in Melbourne, and my dad was sitting next to me, and I got like this buzz on my phone. I went and looked at my emails, and I was like, "Dad!" And he looked at it, and he just sort of punched me in the arm, and he said, "My gosh!" Like, yeah.
And I'd totally forgotten that was like the day that I was getting the email back, and I just got the email and I was like, it's so much better when you're not expecting it and when you've like forgotten.
I was so excited when I was accepted. I actually heard it in person, so it was pretty overwhelming.
I applied for both Top Arts and Top Design because I did product design as well. And I was sort of hoping for top designs, but when I didn't hear about that, I'm like, oh, you know what, that was only going to be the icing on the cake. And then my teacher was like, you should add all your works into top arts because you never know what would happen. And surely enough, it happened.
I was ecstatic. I couldn't even believe it. The first thing I had to do was ring my teacher because we've been so close throughout the whole year. I hadn't actually done studio arts at all until year 12, so she didn't really believe that I was going to get into top arts, even though I said I was. But then by the end of the year, she was certain, and so I'm really glad that I could make her proud. I was so excited. She was really excited on the phone too.
It's still really surreal. I'm really, really excited. Super excited. I remember coming through last year and thinking it was just amazing, thinking it was dreamland. So it's amazing.